My friends call me Lily. So you're
I'm
welcome to
going to
call.
be, hopefully I'm a friend. Okay.
You are a friend of the classroom. I absolutely love having you on. And we are live streaming. And so I want to ask all of you to start sharing, texting, tagging everybody that you can. The algorithms on social media are garbling up the classroom, and we want to make sure that this information gets out. It's important that we use our time wisely. And today we're talking with Dr. David Perlmutter about the book Brainwash. More than ever before, we need to detox our brain. So before we get started, I am going to go ahead and ask you to do your part in helping grow the classroom. Text, email, tag, do whatever you can. And we are also giving away 5 journals to go with the book. So here we go. Let me go ahead, fasten your seatbelt because we're going to learn and grow together. So here we go. It's time to dance, Dr. Perlmutter.
I'm ready.
I just noticed you're not recording.
The Lily and McDermott Show.
We love, we fear, bridges we burn, we make mistakes, then we live and learn. When life gets tough, and it seems like your best ain't good enough. If you're in need of hope, you know where I'll be right here. Right here, and when you need a friend, you can count on me. I'll be right here, waiting for
you. This is the place you can always turn to when you need a friend. The Lily and McDermott Show. To reach out to Lillian, visit her on the web at whenyouneedafriend.com. Now let's all learn together. Here's Lillian McDermott.
Hello, my listening and viewing friends. It's so nice we can meet each other on the air on this beautiful, best day ever. And for those of you who are tuning into the classroom for the first time, please know I've been waiting for you. This is a safe place where you can, I'm sorry, I'm just like going crazy here. I have so many questions for Dr. Perlmutter today. It is my commitment to provide alternative ways to heal, and it is my mission to make awareness, responsibility, and truth a part of our everyday life. And I hope you, my listening, as well as my viewing friends, will feel empowered to embrace a new truth and live the life of your dreams. Now, we've had Dr. Perlmutter in the classroom before. He's a board-certified neurologist and author of many best-selling books. I have several of them. This was one of that I could find. We just moved, and so all my books have been moved around. So this is the Grain Brain, the Whole Life Plan. But also, he co-authored a book with his son, Austin Perlmutter. And about a couple of years ago, and I'm thinking of the timing, maybe it's a couple of years, or maybe it was, a couple of years, 2019 maybe, that we had Austin in the classroom. And this time we're going to have Dr. David Perlmutter to talk about what's happening in this world right now where we need to wash our brain or be less brainwashed and create a new plan to detoxify our brain so that we can take our brains back. And since it is our sole purpose in life to give and receive love and knowledge, I am so grateful that Dr. David Perlmutter is here to do just that. Welcome, Dr. Perlmutter, to the classroom.
Oh, I'm delighted to be back, Lily. Thank you so much for having me.
I am grateful that you're here. And so let's start from the very beginning, because it's been a while since you've been in the classroom, and some people may not know you as well. As I've followed you for many years, and you've got such a huge audience that respects the fact that you've taken a stand in helping people take their life and their health back. But share a little bit about your background, why you became a neurologist.
Well, neurology was almost a given for me. I began involving myself in studying the brain at a very, very young age. My father was a highly trained brain surgeon, and most of our relationship really surrounded what he did day to day. You know, there wasn't the common ground that we had turned out to be interest in the brain, because he wasn't interested in other things that might be a place of sharing with a young developing boy. So I figured if I was going to have a relationship with him, I may as well start to learn about what he was doing. So I found myself, even at age 13 and 14, in the operating room with him,
Wow.
standing on a stool because I couldn't see. At times he would ask me to hold a retractor and, he was opening up somebody's brain to do who knows what. So I
Wow.
got an early exposure to that, and I became quite interested in brain science. In college, I actually began engaging in brain research at the University of Florida, and was able, before I graduated college, to actually write a book chapter and publish several papers on determining the anatomy of the brain using a microscope, so that when brain surgeons were operating on the brain, now using a microscope, they'd know where they were going. Then went, of course, college, medical school, neurology training, and then went into the practice of neurology. As a neurologist, I found it to be a little less than fully satisfactory, because we weren't really helping people get through their problems. The main mission was to cover them up, or to provide what we call symptomatic improvement.
Hmm.
In other words, we were treating the smoke, but we were ignoring the fire.
Yes.
And I found that to be less satisfactory than it could have been. So I began exploring, now that I'm out in practice and seeing patients every day, I began exploring, well, why are these individuals having strokes, losing their cognitive function, becoming unbalanced, developing tremors, having epileptic seizures, developing plaques in their brains that we call multiple sclerosis? Why is it happening? It wasn't good enough for me to simply treat the after effects of those problems. And lo and behold, I discovered decades ago that there was already literature, scientific literature, that was explaining that, for example, Alzheimer's was primarily an inflammatory disorder.
Mhm.
Wow. When I learned that a couple decades ago, that opened up a very important door for me, because we can deal with inflammation. We can deal with modifications that can target that mechanism, whether it's diet, how much sleep we get, how much stress we experience, what is our level of nutritional supplementation. Lots of things factor into that common pathway called inflammation. And inflammation is not just the cornerstone of Alzheimer's, but coronary artery disease, diabetes, obesity, Parkinson's, MS. So this became, an epiphany kind of moment for me, that I could finally treat the fire and not just the smoke, and really develop a new approach to neurology for me. Turns out no one else was doing it. So, I kind of blazed a new path, and began writing books and teaching and having people learn from what I was doing. And, in Latin, the word doctor doesn't mean healer, it means teacher. And I've really recognized that that is the main thing that I want to do and have been doing, and is to do my very best to study as much as I can, and then, like we're doing today, do my best to impart that information for other people, so that they can make changes to regain health and to maintain health.
Yeah, yeah. So before we started the classroom, I spoke with Dr. Perlmutter, and I told him how timely this book is now more than ever before. And so for those of you who would like, there's a companion to this book. It's a journal, and that's what we're going to be giving away. We're not necessarily giving away this book, but we're giving 5 journals away to help you with maintaining this gratitude, attitude of gratitude, which is a really incredible healer for our body. So I want to encourage you to text 407-373-5959. get your name in. I'm going to pick 5 names. So everybody has an opportunity to win one of these books. So that once you text me that you want this, and you need to claim it, that you want your brain back, or an attitude of gratitude, whatever you want to claim, and then text me 407-373-5959. The number is right there, just in case you need to. And then at the end, like tomorrow or the next day, I will draw 5 names and you will be the winner. So everybody, it doesn't matter if you are watching afterwards when we're not live, you still have an opportunity to win. So please take advantage of this. So why did you write this book? And after speaking with Austin, what a great job you've done with that young man. And he was such a great teacher in the classroom. But did you decide to continue that father-son, brain connection?
The genesis of that book happened in this exact room where I'm sitting right now. In fact, I think Austin was sitting here and I was across over on the couch. And we realized that the biggest issue that we face, he's an internal medicine medical doctor, and the biggest issue that we face is this thing called compliance, meaning that we give our patients great information, but so often, as much as 80% of the time, they don't follow through. And what happens is then they are blamed. Why didn't you follow the diet? Why don't you get out and exercise? All of the things that point fingers at people, they go home, they point fingers at themselves, and they feel really bad, they feel guilty, and they ask themselves the same question: why don't I do whatever it is? Cut back on my carbs, eat more fiber, etc. And we began to ponder the whole notion of decision making. How do we make the decisions that we do? And we said, this is a very powerful discussion that we're having, because it turns out that what we learned is that we make decisions obviously based upon brain anatomy, about what's going on within our brains. We can either make impulsive decisions that don't think about tomorrow, that think only about ourselves and what we want or think we want, or we can make decisions that think about the future consequences of what we do today. It thinks about the future consequences in terms of what my decisions are, how they may affect you, how they may affect others, how they may affect the environment, the planet upon which we live.
Yeah.
And it turns out that what we learned is there are really 2 fairly distinct areas of the brain that subserve these 2 types of decision making. On the one hand, there is an area called the amygdala, which is a primitive reptilian part of the brain that says, I want the glazed donut right now, end of story, I'm going to have it. I don't care what it does to me in terms of my blood sugar, gaining weight, etc. That's it. Or I want to do this and I don't care how it affects anybody else because I want to do it, end of story. Or the area called the prefrontal cortex up here in the forehead, that is the area involved in thinking things through, in understanding right and wrong, in understanding empathy, how my actions affect other people. And it turns out that we can actually decide based upon parameters that we'll talk about later, which area of the brain we tap into moment to moment to make our decisions. The deck is stacked against us by and large by so many factors in our modern world that tend to lock us into thinking only of ourselves and our immediate wants or desires. That is the reason that so many of our patients cannot make better decisions, because the deck is stacked against them. They don't have the hardware. They're not wired for good decision making. So blaming them is inappropriate. It's time that we stop blaming people for making these bad decisions, and we stop the whole notion of them blaming themselves day in and day out. Why can't I stay on that diet? I know it's good for me, but I just can't do it.
Yeah.
Their decision-making apparatus has been hijacked. It's been hacked into. And throughout Brainwash, we go into all of the ways that our ability to make good decisions has been absolutely hijacked for the gain of others, for companies who want to sell their stuff, for companies, for example, that want us to adopt a certain type of behavior. So what the book is really about is giving each of us back the ability to make better decisions, not characterizing what those decisions are. There's nothing political about this. It's just giving us back the ability to stop, think about what we're deciding, think about how it's going to affect not only me but others as well, and also how might my decision today play out tomorrow or next year.
I love it. When I say that this book is so timely, although it was written, it was almost prophetic that we would need a book like this, because just recently they released a documentary called Social Dilemma. And we are looking at, have you seen it, Dr.
Yes.
Perlmutter?
Uh-huh.
And we're looking at the fact that we, like when you say hijacked, we don't even know that we have been controlled, that our brains are being controlled, our choices are being controlled. And now, even if I speak it, like I was just speaking to my husband about something that, we were just talking about something, the next day it shows up on my social media. It just popped up. I didn't research it. I do a lot of research and I didn't even touch it. I just mentioned it. We were just talking about it. So even our voice is being fed into our phones. I have no idea how that happened, but it's happened 3 times. So it's not just a coincidence anymore. It's happened 3 times where
Well,
I've
Lily,
spoken
what you've just done is you've called it out, and that's step 1. That it is happening, and that we are primed for that. And we as humans are very much social animals. We thrive in a very interactive environment. It has always been a survival mechanism to have this sort of social interaction between us. We have division of labor. People have skills to do one thing versus another, and then we come together in community and we've been able to survive. Mm-hmm. But social media hacks into that and gives us a false sense of connectedness, when in fact our thought processes are being manipulated for the gain of others. Mm-hmm. We know that 42% of our waking hours are spent in front of one type of screen or another. Yeah. And in a lifetime, that means we will spend 22 years of our lives in front of our computer screens, tablets, phones, televisions, you name it. And that is a powerful conduit into our brains, into our decision-making, and can allow us to easily become manipulated. We are constantly forced to compare ourselves and our decisions to those of others, and are really forced into a situation that we make decisions that are not necessarily good for us. Mm-hmm. To buy this or that, to consume this or that product, not because it's good for us, but because that's what others do who we think are influencers or important or good decision makers, and we want to emulate those people. Yes. So I think it's very important, as you just did, to call it out. And this whole interaction that we have with our devices, I think we are seeing how that plays out these days, and how influential it can become. In Brainwash, we offer up using what is called the test of time, T-I-M-E. And every time you get in front of your computer, for example, apply the test of time, T. How much time are you willing to dedicate to whatever is that task? I. Do you remain intention focused? What is the intention? What is the goal that you are trying to accomplish during that block of time that you're going to be on your computer? Mm-hmm. M. Do you remain mindful while you're engaging that research study or whatever it is you're doing, buying something? Do you remain mindful of the fact that yes, you're having this interaction with this device that is, possibly giving you other types of information? And finally, E, is it at the end of the day enriching? Do you feel that experience was a net positive for you? Mindlessly spending your time watching one video queued up after the next, suddenly 2 and 3 hours goes by, and you can ask yourself, was that necessarily a positive, enriching experience for me? And, oftentimes it isn't. So that's called the test of time.
I love it. I love it. And you know, it's as I was getting reacquainted with the book, and I was thinking, gosh, these are so great. You have some great stats that can help us like wake up. We need to wake up that our brains have been hijacked. We know it. We know it, but what are we willing to do about it? And what I love about this is that you give us some tips, some really good ways to kind of question what it is that we're doing. And so let's go into that. And by the way, for those of you who are just tuning in, we are giving away the partner of this book is a journal, and we're giving away 5. So text at 407-373-5959. And tomorrow or the next day, so I'm just going to give you a couple of days for the people that are listening on podcast as well, text me and reclaim your brain, and we'll send you, I'll pick out 5 people that will be the winners of this particular journal. And so let's talk about some of the things that we can do, because lately I have been, with everything that's happening in the world, one of your, which I think is interesting, is social disconnection syndrome, which we have been forced into because of the lockdowns that we've been facing, which is part 1 of this is the social disconnection syndrome. And that's what I'm thinking. Did you have a crystal ball that this was going to be happening to our future? And how do we reconnect, and what can we do? I know that we have the test of time, but what are some of the tips that we can do that will help us with that connection that we crave so much?
Well, we described, as you mentioned in the book, something called disconnection syndrome. And it is a term that we apply to multiple levels. First, I think, the main thesis of the book is that we are disconnected from that prefrontal cortex, that adult in the room, if you will, that helps us make better decisions, that exercises what is called top-down control, that reins in this, childlike type of brain that says, I want my cookie and I want it now, darn it. That we're able to rein that in to make better decisions that are not only thinking about our safety and our benefit and our desires, but also thinking about others and also thinking about the future. So we should ask then, what is it that threatens this connection? How do we become disconnected from that prefrontal cortex? What is it then that locks us in to the bad decision maker in the brain? And many factors are brought forth in the book. Certainly, we know that the more we cater to any part of the brain, the stronger the connections are. We've said that neurons that fire together wire together. What does that mean? It means the more you practice your tennis stroke, the more indelible it becomes, and you develop muscle memory. Muscles don't develop memory. Obviously, it's all in the brain. Similarly, the more you practice things like empathy and compassion, the more you activate the pathways to make that more part of your day-to-day goal, day-to-day activity. So the mere idea that we are fanning the flames of the amygdala by engaging in narcissistic, self-centered activity, the stronger that connection will be. We can break that connection and start doing things, practicing compassion, keeping a gratitude journal, for example, which you and I talked about before we went live.
Yeah, the companion to this book. We're giving away 5. So go
exactly.
ahead.
Those are tangible activities that can physically rewire the brain away from this self-centered narcissistic area of the brain, impulsive area, more towards the prefrontal cortex. The brain has this wonderful ability to reconfigure itself. It's a term we use called neuroplasticity. It basically means the more you do something, the better it becomes. The Dalai Lama said that if you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion. So we can choose to engage in activities that will more strongly relate us to this part of the brain. It's our gift as humans, this wonderful prefrontal cortex. It takes up 1/3 of the brain's cortex, the top part of the brain. In chimpanzees, it's 17%. In humans, it's a full 1/3. So what a gift we have to have this incredible representation in our brains that allows us to be loving, compassionate, empathetic, future planning individuals has served us well. So the next thing that I would offer up that is really quite interesting and was a profound discovery for Austin and me was the realization that the pathway connecting that prefrontal cortex back to the amygdala that allows it to exercise this top-down control, this keeping the adult in the room, that connection, which when it goes away is part of this disconnection syndrome, that connection is threatened by a process called inflammation. Now, this is not the first time that your show has talked about inflammation, I am certain. So inflammation we think about when we get a bee sting, mosquito bite, whatever, allergies to something or other, we sneeze, we think, oh, I have inflammation in my nose, etc. But inflammation is a smoldering process that can occur throughout the human body that relates to some profound changes. We know, for example, that Alzheimer's is an inflammatory disease. Depression, multiple sclerosis, coronary artery disease, diabetes, cancer, obesity. These are inflammatory disorders. Inflammation also threatens the connection between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. More inflammation means more impulsivity, means more narcissism. It means less empathy towards others. Now, I say empathy towards others. Some people might think that's redundant, because I say it because you should be empathetic towards your future self as well. You can be empathetic towards yourself. You can be making decisions now that are kind and loving to Lily's, the tomorrow Lily. So that is self-directed empathy, nothing wrong with that. But let me get back to the topic. And when we recognize that a fundamental player in things like depression, and self-centeredness and lack of empathy and short-sightedness is inflammation that can be brought on by many mechanisms, it really opens the door for us to ask ourselves, what can we do to lower the fire, to turn the fire off? In fact, in Latin, inflammation comes from inflammare, inflame, flame. It really actually means fire. And it's very apropos, because basically when we are highly inflamed, our bodies are on fire. Many things suffer. The brain suffers, the heart suffers, pancreas suffers. And for purposes of brainwash, that connection that keeps us involved with our prefrontal cortex, that gift, is threatened as well.
Amazing.
Now, we know that one of the biggest contributors to inflammation in our modern world is this modern Western, now global diet. This Westernization of the global diet is presenting to the world a diet that is fanning the flames of inflammation. These highly processed, refined carbohydrate foods are nothing but inflammatory. They are calorie dense and nutrient poor, and they turn on the production of these inflammatory chemicals that are very, very threatening to us across a very wide spectrum of diseases. They threaten our immune competence. It is the reason that some people have better outcome or worse outcome as it relates to, for example, having exposure to SARS-CoV-2 and developing COVID-19, based upon their regulation of their immune system, which is affected by inflammation and causes inflammation, I might add. So taking it back, though, to just this global change in nutrition, which is increasing year by year, think about it, because our global change in nutrition is increasing inflammation and therefore threatening the connection to the prefrontal cortex in everyone who's consuming that type of diet, it means that globally we're leading to an increase in self-centeredness, in reduction in empathy, in impulsivity, and basically the diet that's becoming the global norm is threatening our ability to get along with others and participate in sharing viewpoints and in trying to see things from another person's perspective.
That is all those things, we're seeing it more and more today. I mean, that's why I'm asking people to please make sure that they spread the good news about the classroom, because we're being censored. There's so many, like, if I don't believe in what you believe, you're wrong, or you're stupid, or you're, an idiot, or whatever. The name calling, the cancel culture, all these things, we're seeing it like boil up to this incredible frenzy. And I've seen it more now. And that's why I'm so excited about to be able to have this conversation with you. And I'm sure that all of you who have questions that I put in a queue, when we finish the Teacher's Pet Corner, after the podcast, we'll ask these questions, because there's so much to cover. And I want to stay focused on this book and make sure that all of you have an opportunity to win the companion to this book, which is the Gratitude Journal, or the journal that will help you with the steps that you need to take. Contact 407-373-5959. Claim it here and ask your questions, and we'll take care of it later on. 407, and then I'll pick 5. 407-373-5959. We'll give it a couple of days so that the people that are on podcasts, that podcast is really just booming. So I want to include all of you who are listening on podcasts as well. So when we're looking at inflammation, and we're looking at nutrition, that's my passion, is nutrition. I focus on a nutritarian lifestyle. I don't know if you know Dr. Joel Furman. He's been a wonderful teacher in the classroom. Yesterday, we had Rip Esselstyn. We're talking about a whole food, plant-based diet, where, that's as natural to nature as possible. But we all have inflammatory thoughts. We also have these thoughts that hold us back, these limiting beliefs. Just yesterday, I had a text. We were talking about, I can't change my diet because I'm over in my 50s. And Rip said, no, we changed the diet of a 79-year-old, and he's 86 years old, and he's doing well. People that are walking dead, they change their lifestyle, and they live, longer than the doctor says that they're going to live. So let's talk about these thoughts in our mind and these toxic, and I created a workshop called I Am the Solution. It's a New Truth series, I Am the Solution. And by the way, you can sign up February 5th through 7th. It's a weekend workshop. So check it out at whenyounneedafriend.com. But what we're talking about is these thoughts, these limiting beliefs that say, well, this is what I've learned, and this is all I have, and this is how I feel. I can't feel better. How do you combat something like that, Dr. Perlmutter, with someone who has these limitations? They're holding themselves back because they believe they're not good enough.
Well, they can be holding themselves back for a number of reasons, and well beyond feeling like they're not good enough. But I mean, what you're describing exactly is what we talk about in Brainwash. That is disconnection syndrome at its finest. Because when you're locked into the amygdala, you cannot appreciate any other reality. The world is either round or it is flat, and there's no discussion.
Yes.
And, unfortunately, you and I are having this conversation in a very interesting time in United States of America, where people are either on one side or the other, and there is no common ground. There's no vetting of anyone else's ideas. And it's been that way for a long, long time, but it's certainly never been like it is now. And, politicians running for office will frequently say, when I get to Washington, I'm going to reach across the aisle. And, who could ask for more? I can ask for more. And I would say, why in the heck do we have to have an aisle? When you go to a wedding these days, it used to be the bride's family was on one side and the groom's family was on another side. Most of the weddings I've been to lately, there is no side. Everybody gets together and they meet new people and they shake hands. Well, not so much today, of course, but they meet new people, and that's what it's all about. It's the coming together and the sharing, so that the product of the marriage is greater than the sum of the parts. And I would submit that as it relates to government, the product could be greater than the individual ideologies of one side versus another.
Correct.
Let's not just reach across the aisle. Let's shuffle the deck and give you a seat. And you're going to sit next to somebody whose viewpoint you completely disagree with, but you're going to listen to it for the very, very first time. You're going to try it on. It's been said that never judge another man until you walk a mile in his shoes. And the reason people say that is because then when you judge that person, you're already a mile away and you have his shoes. It's a bit of a joke, but my point is we have to try on what it's like to see things through other people's eyes. Maybe the world is flat. I don't think so. But if you want to tell me the world is flat, I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to listen to you, and you're going to give me your rationale for that position.
Yes.
That doesn't happen anymore. It's either my way or no way.
Yeah.
And the fact that we have always shared ideas has allowed us to be innovative, allows us to come up with novel solutions to problems that are better than just one side versus the other side. Again, the whole being so much greater than just the sum of the parts. We're losing out on the ability of both sides of Congress to offer up their ideas. So my hope is that it will change, but recognize that the locking into ideology is a manifestation of the fact that the amygdala, the primitive brain center, is amplified these days to levels that are unprecedented, and we are really kept out of that chamber of the brain that allows us to stop, take a deep breath, have some conversation, listen to another person's point of view, meet people halfway and come up with novel solutions that are better for everybody.
I love it. I love it. And I wish, and this is how, responsibility and taking 100% responsibility is the focus of the classroom. And we've discussed this many times in the past. But in order for us to do that, we must be curious. We must be curious about the other person's position instead of critical. So that C word, that shift that you go from that critical, I want to prove them wrong, to that compassion that you talk about, another C word, and to that curiosity to say, gosh, let me look at it, their perspective. And like you said, it's getting worse and worse and worse. And that's why I have continued on doing the classroom. And we've gone from doing a show to doing a classroom, because I want to make sure that people develop that curiosity. One of the things that when you talk about that willpower, and you talk of the amygdala, and we talk about all of that, many people that I hear as a coach, as a certified life coach, I hear people say, oh, I don't have any willpower. But what I'm learning from your book is that willpower has a lot to do with so much inflammation. And so for people that have that limiting belief, I have no willpower, therefore I'm not even going to try, what would you tell them is the truth about willpower?
Well, it's true that the ability to make seemingly difficult decisions can be very challenging for people. Many people do not have that ability. And let me give you an example. I mean, the main purpose of Brainwash is to offer people an off-ramp from this super highway of being locked in. And these off-ramps are coming by every couple of minutes. There's another off-ramp. And the notion that, for example, let's say you're a physician, and that's how we got into this, Austin and I got into the idea of writing this book, recognize that people can't make these, commit to making good decisions. Some of them, many of them, 80% of them, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But let's just say you're dealing with a patient who has type 2 diabetes, and you know darn well that a more ketogenic, low carbohydrate, low refined carbohydrate diet would be best for Mr. or Mrs. Jones. Our point is that they've heard that story before.
Yeah.
They've been to other doctors. They know what they should and shouldn't eat, and they don't have the ability to do that. So what we're offering is, look, first time you're trying to make that decision again, or you're the doctor working with this individual, helping him or her make better decisions, it might just be the first time around that you say, this week and the next couple of weeks, I'll see you again, but it's going to be a bit of a surprise. I'm not going to talk to you about diet. I don't really think you can make the changes in terms of your diet. Let's see if we can offer you one of our off ramps, so we can get you off this superhighway of having no, as you call it, willpower.
Mhm.
It might be that we offer you the off-ramp of a better night's sleep. Well, that seems kind of random. It turns out that, more than half of Americans don't get enough sleep and don't get enough quality sleep or restorative sleep. So the importance of this is sleep, a restorative night's sleep, has a huge role to play in decision-making, in whether we're making decisions from the amygdala or we're able to reconnect to the prefrontal cortex. So it might well be that during the next couple of weeks, we're going to do everything we can to get you a better night's sleep. We're going to look at your sleep hygiene. What are you doing in your sleeping environment to make sure it's a good night's sleep? Are you in front of the computer or television in the evening getting blue light exposure that's inhibiting melatonin, therefore you don't get to sleep? Is your room cool enough? Does your partner snore or move his or her legs around at night and wake you up periodically? Is there noise outside? All of the factors that are important to getting a good night's sleep. That might just be enough such that when that person returns in a couple weeks, they are more likely to be able to commit to a dietary change, which will then help them immensely, but maybe not. So maybe 2 weeks later we say, okay, we're going to do something now. We're going to layer on something else to our program, nothing to do with diet yet. We're going to ask you to make sure that every day you spend 20 minutes connecting to nature. Well, I live in a big city. I can't go out in nature. That can't work. Doesn't have to be that way. It can be watching a video. It can be drawing. It can be even looking or having a painting on the wall, or even houseplants. Any connection with nature fosters reconnection to the prefrontal cortex and will improve your ability to regain, as you called it, your willpower. Maybe the week after that, it's meditation. Maybe the week after that, it's expressing gratitude. Maybe the week after that, it's exercise. All of these things that are sort of dancing around the ability of this person or the lack thereof to make good dietary decisions. Now, you might have be dealing with somebody who eats pretty well but never exercises and wants to do that, or spends too much time on the internet and wants to cut down on that, or finds him or herself involved in some sort of addictive behavior that they are not proud of. Whatever it may be, regaining the ability to make better decisions is what brainwash is all about. And it's very much structural in the brain. It's very much mechanistic from how we describe it. But the tools are very, very straightforward. And the feedback we've gotten on this book has been really very, very empowering, exciting, fulfilling, and we're really very, very happy with how it all played out. And I am, to be able to participate in a project like that with our son is the icing on the cake.
Yeah, he reminded me of my nephew as well. He's just such a nice doctor. He's a nice, it's like you're taking the generation before you in the medical profession. And I'm sure as a trailblazer, you probably, have a lot of bullets in your back from people not wanting to comply to what you were saying, but to be able to, your son take that baton and go to that next level and be able to continue the work that you're doing at a higher level is like the dream come true. And so for many times, and I stopped interviewing doctors that only see things one way, which is the allopathic way. There's more to life. Our bodies, we're spiritual, we're spirit, mind, and body. We're more than just what we believe we are. We're not just, I'm not just a radio show host. I'm also a mom and a wife and a grandmother and a great grandmother. And I'm not just, a person that has a career. I have a spirit that needs nurturing too, and relationships that need feeding as well. We tend to forget that we're more than just one thing. And to be able to have, these paths that we can take and say, it's more than just nutrition. I've got to change these beliefs. I've got to strengthen my frontal cortex. I need to do all these things so that I can make these decisions. To be able to make that plan is invaluable. Before I ask you any more questions, Dr. Perlmutter, I do want to remind all of you who are watching today that we are giving away the companion book to Brainwash. It's a journal. We're going to be giving away 5, so please, 407-373-5959. I want to encourage all of you to go to whenyouneedafriend.com because we are being censored. We are being censored, and if all of a sudden you join in and you don't see us on social media, please know to go to whenyouneedafriend.com. Please subscribe so that you can get our mailings, and anything that we do in the future, you will know. I ask you to please subscribe to my BitChute account as well as all my social media accounts so that you know where to go to if just in case something happens. While you're there, please check out my sponsors who are helping support the classroom. We also have workshops and classes that we're doing with Dr. Lorraine Day, the workshop called I Am the Solution. There's so many things that we're doing to build that frontal lobe, but that frontal cortex, so that it'll help us be more empathetic and love not just ourselves, but the others as well. I want to encourage you to check out all the savings and all the discounts that you get, but most importantly, figure out ways to support our sponsors. There's also affiliate page that we have. You can click on that, and that helps out the classroom grow. But you, as an enrolled student of the classroom, can help out with donations from $10 a month to $1,000, depending on what you have or what you can provide. Because we need, now that things are changing, we need more and more support as we grow the classroom and keep this information alive. So I want to encourage you to go to whenyouneedafriend.com. Again, subscribe. But I also want to take you to Dr. Perlmutter's, the drperlmutter.com, to learn more of all his books that he has. If this is ringing a bell with you, especially as we enter the new year, and many of you have resolutions that don't work. They don't work because people don't want to change their life. They don't change their life. And so what we can do is we can make commitments. Like Dr. Perlmutter said, every 2 weeks, maybe every week, make a new commitment for yourself and change your life. So Dr. Perlmutter, is it difficult for you? I mean, you have so many books, Brainwash being your last one that I know of. That I think that this is your last one that you've had so far, because I know it's not going to be your last. But how do you deal with, because you know these truths, and you're out there, proclaiming it from the mountaintop, and you're saying, hey, listen, I'm not hoarding this information. I'm sharing it with you so that you can take the baton too and take your brain back, take your health back, take your life back. How do you deal with patients that are, or people that come to you and say, oh, this isn't going to work for me because I'm this unique individual that nothing works for? What do you tell somebody like that?
Well, first, I am very supportive of any patient who would say I'm a unique individual, because each and every patient is
sure.
unique.
Well, okay. Yeah.
The idea of a recipe for any specific problem
You're right.
ignores the uniqueness of that
You're
patient.
absolutely
it's far
right,
more
yes.
important to know who is the person who has the disease as opposed to the disease that person has. But generally, if a person is going to be consulting me, they don't come to me, saying, "Why are you wasting your time with me?" They're having an issue and wanting a different viewpoint on it. But I want to get back to the notion of I know these truths, etc. I know things that I think are likely true, but I think that it's very important that people embrace the notion that those who they respect to give them information should have the opportunity to change their messaging with time. I know my messaging has changed over time. Believe it or not, probably 25 years ago, I was saying that we should all be on, for example, a really low-fat diet. Nothing could be worse in your diet than dietary fat. And the science has revealed otherwise, that we need good sources of dietary fat, the monounsaturated fats. I'm sure you've had people talking about the types of fats that are good. Mm-hmm. But I've been called out for saying I've changed my messaging. Yeah, I have, and I will.
I think it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful.
I know, and we should hope that if you say I'm an influencer, whatever, people from whom you get information do change their information with time. I read an interesting study this morning from Stanford talking about the fact that strict isolation during this pandemic may not offer up that much benefit. That kind of challenged my viewpoint, but this was good science, and I respect researchers at Stanford. So we have to be open for new ideas, though they may be challenging for us. That's how we make progress. The moment we stop challenging our notions, we stagnate, and we cannot, especially now, afford to stagnate. We've got to keep being innovative. We've got to keep thinking of new ideas and being appreciative of new ideas that may not be necessarily in line with our own as we move forward.
Well said. Well said. And that is something that I always, it's been a while since I've said it because a lot of people have been following the classroom and I feel, okay, am I going to be redundant here? But I do want to say that don't believe anything you hear. Research it. Like if it resonates with you, like what Dr. Perlmutter is saying, or what I am saying, if something resonates with you, or maybe even if it clashes with what you believe, instead of going, dismiss it and not do anything about it, I'd rather that curiosity, again, be curious to it and don't just repeat what Dr. Perlmutter says or repeat what I say, research it so that if it becomes your new truth, then it will stick with you more than if you're just repeating what you're hearing. And so I just want to encourage you that everything that we've said today, research it and make it your truth so it sticks with you, and be open to new truths. Because there's always, and that is what I have an issue with the allopathic community. My father may have had a TIA yesterday, and they want to put him back on a drug that almost hemorrhaged him. And he's 90 years old, and I'm texting my sister saying, put him on natural vitamin E. Put him on natural vitamin E, which is a natural blood thinner. He's 90 years old. Don't put him back on something that gave him a hemorrhage. But the doctor doesn't want to look at it. The doctor doesn't want to look at the possibility that natural vitamin E could be a potential blood thinner for my father. You spend a lot of money to learn these truths that may or may not support all your patients. So I really admire you, Dr. Perlmutter, that you're able to take what you learned and look beyond it and say, okay, what's the other side of it? And I think that that's a good way to remove this brainwash that we are experiencing, is just that curiosity of what else is out there. So it been, go ahead.
I have to say that the title brainwash, it goes both ways.
Yes.
There's been significant hijacking of our decision-making process.
It's time to cleanse it. Yeah.
But then on the other hand, the title does mean that we're giving you the opportunity to clean the slate a little bit and, really pave the way for better decision-making and ultimately, we're hopeful, a better life. And I think it's working, since we published that book last year, now it's in 14 languages around the world. And no, I have no way of knowing how close the translation is to really being what we tried to say, but you have to have a little faith in that. So, but nonetheless, I think it's the main reason we wrote the book is so people can stop, take a deep breath, take a step back, and get a sense as to what in the heck is going on around us, and recollect our thoughts and then move forward. Right now, things are in a frenzy. People are not able to, they're not able to make good decisions because their decision-making apparatus is threatened. I mean, watching the news is a direct fear amplifier of the amygdala activity. Yeah. So the more of the news that we watch, the more it amplifies our amygdala, the more we're locked into that, and we're locked out of the gift. We're locked out of the ability to make better decisions and to think of other people. Yeah. I'm not saying bury your head in the sand. We should know what's going on. There's a lot going on, but it doesn't mean that we should be spending 42% of our waking time in front of a screen. Yes. That's what the average American does. Now, that's an old statistic. My sense is that it's got to be more. especially during the time that you and I are having this discussion. But please understand that, you know, the way that news becomes so attractive and addicting is because it appeals to our sense of threat, our fear, and we can't turn it off. Make yourself turn it off. Stay informed, read the paper, whichever paper you think is more balanced and you choose to read. I'm not making a decision for anyone in terms of what paper they should read, but it's been said that when you're doing one thing, you're not doing something else. When we're locked in front of a screen, we're not out walking in the neighborhood, we're not interacting with other people, which we can do safely with appropriate constraint. There are other things that we need to be doing to stay healthy and happy and engaged with other people, which is so important. But when we lock ourselves into, you know, the media, we compromise our ability to engage those other good things.
Absolutely.
6% of people who use
Dr. Perlmutter, we're going to continue our conversation after
enough.
with the teacher's pet. For those of you, like and share and all follow all this, I'll do all that stuff. But we're going to continue our conversation, answer your questions after the podcast. Thank you, Dr. Perlmutter. Please remember, we'll be right here waiting for you worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. This is Lillian McDermott and Dr. David Perlmutter wishing you love, peace, joy, and unexpected abundance. Make it the best day ever.
The opinions and advice expressed on the Lillian McDermott radio show are intended for the individual callers and guests on the program and are presented to our wider audience solely for general educational purposes. Please act responsibly and consult personally with your own medical, psychological, or nutritional expert before taking any steps to improve your life.
Great conversation. I love this book. I want to encourage all of you to get a copy. They can go to Amazon. Can they get it at drperlmutter.com? Dr. Perlmutter?
No, we don't do any sales
Amazon?
there, but any online retailer, Books A Million, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, local bookstores. I want to support local bookstores, so there you go.
Library as well. Get it at the library. I mean, there's so many different ways to take your brain back and you know, detox it so that you can make the decisions that you want and figure out, you know, that's, you know, I always say, and when people take my courses that we're doing the workshop that's going to be on February 5th through 7th, I always say we need to become self-cleaning ovens. You know, it's really easy to find the speck on your neighbor's eye, but very seldom do we see the plank in ours. And so you know, the whole workshop is to really take a look at ourselves and
that's so important.
Yes. So what's holding us back and kind of like learning some truths about the brain and how it works. And, you know, certainly I'm going to bring this into that workshop because we need to take a step back. So you know, one of the things that, because we do it, but for those of you who have some questions, type in a Q and I will read your questions. I'm about to scroll down. I wanted to get as much information as possible. You talked about fact checking and how, you know, I used to write for Florida Today and basically any article that bleeds leads. So, you know, of course I have, you know, feel good kind of like article, and those articles, you know, are like the back and the personal growth and the other section. But if it's meant to capture your attention, or if they want to get you to buy their paper, it has to bleed. It has to make you fearful and invoke some of these emotions. So with all that is happening in the world right now, Dr. Perlmutter, I always say, you know, how much fact checking are we doing when somebody is yelling fire at the back of a theater? You're going to run. You're not going to check. And I want all of us to check and be curious about what we're learning. Learn the other side of the equation as well. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Dr. Perlmutter?
Well, I think that vis-a-vis our conversation that we just had, you know, recognize that fear is, you know, is a very powerful emotion that is ingrained into us because it teaches us to stay away from certain things. It's been very protective for us, very a powerful survival mechanism. So, you know, we have this powerful negativity bias whereby things that are negative or threatening become much more ingrained into our memory and activate that part of the brain called the amygdala.
Yeah.
That's part of our hardwiring. It's reality, and it has served us well, as a matter of fact. The problem is that fast track into our brains is being manipulated by every bit of news that we see,
Yeah.
by all the pop-ups on our feeds when we're on the internet, and it just it gets right in. We can't keep that from happening. So I think your point is that we should be aware of the fact that it's doing that,
Mhm.
and do whatever we can to limit the influence that it has. In other
Yep.
words, turn the TV off.
That's right.
It's good to be informed.
And
We want to stay
notifications.
informed,
And
but,
notifications. Yeah.
day and night, it doesn't do us any good. And this, is part of a theme that we developed in Brainwash, and that is that these are parts of the hacks that have happened into our brains, whereby others are taking advantage of our programming, of our innate types of activities. Let me give you another example. We are hardwired in our brains to crave sweet. It was a powerful survival mechanism. A sweet food has generally, throughout our history, been a safe food. There are no sweet foods that are poisonous. But beyond that, sweet has told our bodies to prepare for winter. When we ate the sweet blueberries in the fall, that sugar caused us to increase our insulin, which causes us to make body fat. So it is a powerful, deep-seated type of desire that we have that's now been hacked in our modern world, to the extent that more than 60% of the 2 million different foods sold in our grocery stores have added sweetener.
Yes.
Because it makes them more appealing.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
we will spend more of our dollars on those foods, making those people happier because they have more
Yes.
money. Not that
That's right.
necessarily happier. My point is that social media has hacked into our innate sense of wanting to be connected to other people. The sugar in our foods is a hack into our innate sense that sugar is a good food for us, when nowadays it is not. And these offer, just ways that others can insinuate themselves into our decision-making for their benefit at the cost of our benefit.
Well said. I want all of you to just digest it, because if you know somebody is manipulating you, are you going to continue to allow them to manipulate you, or are you going to step back and say, I've got to learn a new program. I got to get a new program in my brain. And how do you get the new program? Is by you repeating good behaviors that will support you. And
Exactly.
so Dr. Perlmutter, I've got Vivian has a question. She said, my neurologist at Yale has placed me on Plavix 75 milligrams daily for a tear and 100% blood clotted carotid right artery. They don't know why it happened, and I've been on the med for 2 years. Is this the best treatment and my only option to live with this? I am very concerned, but Yale doesn't listen nor wants to help me. Will Dr. Perlmutter review my case?
Well, let me tell Vivian that I am not your doctor.
Correct.
But what I think would be reasonable to discuss with your doctor is, might there be a time when the Plavix, which is a type of blood thinner that reduces the adhesiveness or stickiness of platelets, the blood clotting parts of the blood, might there be a time when I can stop Plavix? And if so, when will we determine that I have reached that point? In other words, at what point will you be able to image the tear in my carotid artery, such that now that it is healed, do I continue to need Plavix to keep my blood, let's say, thinned at this point? What's the end game here for me taking Plavix? Having said that, I would not, obviously, I'm not giving Vivian specific advice, but I don't think it is necessarily bad advice.
Okay, so in a situation like that, I've interviewed Dr. Andrew Saul of Food Matters, that vitamin guy. He has website called dryourself.com. And I'm not recommending that anybody doctor themselves, but I'm just sharing that website where they show that natural, not synthetic, but natural vitamin E is a great blood thinner. In a situation like that, would she be able to bring it up? Like I've been trying to bring it up to my father's doctor for a long time, and they won't listen.
Well, let me tell you that, you're probably not going to have, as many guests on your program who are as dedicated to natural approaches to problems as am I. I'm sure you have some who are even more dedicated, but I'm all in as it relates to nutrition and supplements, et cetera.
Yeah.
But I would say in this case of this particular person, being personalized about her, that we would want to see the research that would indicate that specifically for an intimal tear of the carotid artery, where is the data that would demonstrate that vitamin E would prove equally satisfactory to Plavix in terms of protecting her from having a major event, which is what this is all about. And if that does not exist, I think, frankly, while we can say, well, vitamin E is a blood thinner, therefore in this situation, it should be helpful. I'd like to be able to say to Vivian, here is a head-to-head comparison in 1,000 patients, and here's what they found. Whereas vitamin E might be safer because it's a natural product, it may not have been as effective. So when we look at the risk-benefit ratio of Plavix versus vitamin E, et cetera, but just because we know that there is some blood thinning activity of vitamin E doesn't necessarily mean that in Vivian's particular case, is it the right choice. We need to look at her studies. We need to look at her genome to determine if she has any blood clotting gene polymorphisms, et cetera. Really need to dive deeply into her history and figure out why did she have a carotid artery intimal tear in the first place? And then what should we be doing today based upon the results of thousands of other individuals with a similar type of problem in the past?
Yeah. If somebody wanted to consult with you, like she said, will you look at my case? If somebody wanted to consult with you, Dr. Perlmutter, do they just go to your site? Do they call a number, or what can they do?
On drperlmutter.com is all the information anyone would need. And beyond that, I would say that we address a lot of problems and look at both mainstream approaches, whether it's radiation surgery, you name it, and natural approaches, whether it's using a dietary change, a ketogenic diet to treat type 2 diabetes, you name it. And we look at all kinds of issues and through both lenses. And I think our mission is to have as many tools in the toolbox as possible. People say, well, what you're doing is really outside the box. And I would tell people that my mission is not to be outside of the box. It's really to make the box bigger so that we can ultimately agree that, maybe it makes sense to put a type 2 diabetic on a ketogenic diet based upon the research carried out by Dr. Sarah Hallberg, for example, that shows that there's a dramatic improvement in type 2 diabetes with reduction in medication that can be achieved by going on that type of diet. That's good science. It's good practice.
Very good. Very good. I love it. She continues on, Vivian continues on that the blood to my brain is compromised, and so my life is very much different and difficult at times. What can I do to help myself? Which I think you did discuss some things to help myself more and to keep my brain healthy besides healthy eating and exercise. Are there supplements that are that have herbal support? Do you know of any? Or you're not giving?
And I would say though, with respect to diet and exercise, those are powerful interventions to help the brain. Interestingly, in 2018 in the journal Neurology, there was a review of what doctors should recommend neurologists to their patients who have mild cognitive impairment. In other words, they're starting to become demented on their way to Alzheimer's. What can we use to treat these individuals to help reduce their risk of progressing to full-blown Alzheimer's? And it was a review of 14 different interventions, this type of drug, that type of drug, and they concluded that only one intervention on the part of the neurologist is effective in slowing down the decline of the brain. And it was a drug called exercise. Exercise,
I knew you were
recommended in the journal Neurology. The American Academy of Neurology said that we looked at Namenda, we looked at Aricept, we looked at all these drugs, and the only thing that really can help slow the decline in the brain is aerobic exercise.
Amazing.
So, we may say that in passing, yeah, you should exercise, eat a good diet, but we'll give you other things. Exercise is probably on the top of it, should be on the top of Vivian's list. Now, what might the diet look like? Of course, she should check with her treating healthcare provider about what diet is best for her. But by and large, we know that blood sugar elevations are damaging to the brain. So the diet goal should be one that provides lots of nutrients, but further is a diet that keeps the blood sugar under control and therefore keeps insulin working. The brain is desperate for the action of insulin for a number of reasons. So we threaten the action of insulin when our blood sugar goes up. Our blood sugar goes up when we have a crappy diet, when we're eating too many refined carbohydrates and ultra-processed foods. So it's all about getting back to those foods that help to keep the blood sugar in check. By and large, my recommendation is a mostly plant-based diet with lots of good dietary fiber and a lot of different colors on your plate.
I love it. I love it. David Freeman says hello to the both of us. I know I love him. He loves you too. And so he wanted to say hello to both of us. So let me see if I see any more cues. Let me go down. Okay, I don't see any more cues. In order for me to ask a question, I need to see the cue. I'm so grateful to all of you who have tuned in today and made lots of different comments. And I think Holly says too much time on the screen gives anxiety and a headache. Absolutely. I mean, set your time. Have they done a study, Dr. Perlmutter, which says this is the maximum anyone should be connected to a screen versus being out in nature, breathing fresh air, getting
That's
out?
a good question. I think that it'd be very difficult to construct that study because the main thing, aside from the information that you're getting that can be detrimental, the main thing, and I mentioned it before, is when you're doing one thing, you're not doing something else. So if you prioritize your day with a certain amount of time dedicated to exercise, a certain amount of time dedicated to getting outside in nature, if that's available to you, a certain amount of time to preparing your foods, and a certain amount of time to connecting with other people, then you're not going to have 42% of your day available to spend online doing whatever it is you think you want to do. So I think it's a question of prioritizing those other things because my sense is they're more valuable for you. And then, as we talked about during our broadcast, applying the test of time to your online experience. But, we live in a world where 6% of people who have access to the internet qualify for what is called internet addiction. It's a lot of people. It's 250 million people. That's 5 times the population of Great Britain. And this is a type of experience on the internet that is disruptive to their productivity, to their lives, to their families and loved ones. So, we're seeing around the world, at least until COVID began, the development of camps where people could go and learn how to reestablish real relationships with people and regain the benefits of that. So, obviously now with the pandemic that has changed, but I think it's really about ranking those other activities higher and letting your idle time on the internet fall to the bottom.
Yeah, that's true. Just recently I had a bunch of people over at the house for the holidays, and we had some young people that were in the house, and they didn't talk to one another, and they were on their phones.
Oh, I love that. That's great.
They were like looking on their phones, and I thought, I'd love to do a workshop with the youth to say, how do we regain this? Because we've lost our kids to the internet, and they can be anywhere with a click or a swipe, they could be in pornography if that's where it's leading them. We don't know as parents, and we've lost that control over our children. And I'm not saying that those kids that were here, but I just thought it was interesting that I remember when I was a kid and there was another kid, yeah, there was a level of shyness, but there was eventually, we would come together and we'd start playing together, but I didn't see that progression. And I didn't feel like it was my place to get involved.
You know, the average number of social media accounts of the age group from 16 to 24 is 8.5. So if it's not happening for you on Instagram, there's always others, or Twitter, whatever it may be. And, you know, I think some of these younger people feel an obligation to maintain their connection on these sites. And so, you know, it's all about detoxing from, you know, taking it away. Now, I'm not going to sit here and be totally disparaging with reference to the internet. My goodness.
We're here.
You know, allowed the democratization of knowledge globally. I think that's awesome. It's an incredible tool. We write our books based on, you know, the ability we have to get instantaneously any research study we want on PubMed or whatever the platform is.
Yeah.
So how incredible that I can be right here and not have to go to a library and be able to have unlimited information to explore topics that I'm interested in. But as we've talked about earlier, we have to rein it in. We have to apply this test of time each time we're involved with the internet.
Yes, absolutely. Real quick, what is your opinion on iodine when it comes, or what is the science and what you've developed? Do you have any opinion on the importance of iodine in the body?
Yeah, and I would say we certainly value iodine mostly because of its role in terms of thyroid hormone. You know, we don't really see iodine deficiency much anymore. We don't have the goiter belt where people were iodine deficient. You know, frankly, that's one of a great thing that medicine did accomplish with the iodization of salt. Allowing people who might not otherwise have gotten iodine to receive iodine. We know that, you know, there is a sense that generally in our population, we could probably use a little more iodine. You know, there are various tests that people can get to determine if they actually need more iodine. We were actually, have been in the past using what is called Lugol solution. It's an iodine solution. To treat individuals who we thought could use more iodine. We understand that though iodine is highly conserved in the body, that the activation of thyroid hormone actually liberates a little bit of iodine. People who have low thyroid, for example, take something called T4. It's a thyroid a protein molecule that has 4 iodines on it. And then to activate it, they make what's called T3 in their peripheral tissues, like muscle tissues and liver, where they cut off one of the iodine atoms, and then they have T3. That's the active form of iodine. So that iodine is able to recirculate. But, you know, it is people can be tested for iodine. And I think that if people have low thyroid function, it's certainly something that bears evaluation.
Interesting. And then there was another question that said, any advice on iron deficiency?
Iron deficiency. Actually, not that uncommon either. And I would say that would be something that people who are all in on plant-based diets should be thinking about, that the bioavailability of the iron from meat versus iron-rich vegetables is higher, that we're able to absorb from meat higher levels of iron. Doesn't mean you have to eat meat. It means that you just have to be thinking about that. If you choose to get your iron from leafy green vegetables, that's perfectly fine. But we can determine iron levels. We can also look at markers of iron adequacy by looking at simply the size of the red blood cell on a simple blood count. We can look at ferritin levels as well. That gives us a sense as to the iron level. You know, people may have low iron levels, in which case their ability to bind oxygen and transfer oxygen in the red blood cell might be compromised. Iron plays other important roles as well. So I think it's a valuable thing to look at as part of general blood examination.
Very good. Very good. Okay. So before we started the class and we were like in private closed doors, I said the last time you were on, Dr. Perlmutter, you were really excited about microbiota transplant, fecal microbiota transplantation. And so I said, I'm going to try to kind of work it in there somewhere. And you're like, that's a big leap. So
I'm waiting for the segue. I mean,
there is no segue. I'm just going to go there. So have there, because when you first brought it up in the classroom, it was new. And I had asked the question about the donors. What kind of, is there a protocol for the donors? Do they research them and what's going on? Just really quick, have there been improvements with the fecal transplantation?
So let me just, for people who've never heard of this term before, yes, indeed, we're talking about taking the fecal material from one individual and transplanting it into the colon of another individual. Why might that be important? Well, we have to take a step back, allow me, to recognize, first of all, that the diversity and sheer numbers of bacteria that live within the colon play a very important role in maintaining our health, in controlling our immune systems, in allowing us to manufacture neurotransmitters, can even affect our mood, to create other products like short chain fatty acids that have a role to play in regulating our gene expression, to regulate the leakiness or permeability of the gut lining, which is really fundamental in terms of inflammation as well. So we really rely upon these guests that live within us to do us a big service. We provide them a nice, warm place to live and feed them, and in exchange, they do great things that basically keep us alive. We have this wonderful symbiotic relationship with our gut organisms that has been cultured, great term, for hundreds of thousands of years. We are able to determine what the gut bacteria was like in our ancestors by now having the technology to sequence the DNA, or RNA rather, from fossilized fecal material of our distant ancestors 7,000–8,000 years ago. So that said, there are situations in which the gut bacteria becomes disrupted, and that can be threatening to that person's health. As an example, some people develop an overgrowth of a particular species called Clostridium difficile, and they develop something called C. diff, Clostridium difficile, which is a life-threatening diarrhea-type illness. The mainstay of treatment for C. diff has been classically to give people antibiotics. Problem with that is antibiotics kill a lot of other good things like our good bacteria. So it turns out that actually taking the fecal material from a healthy individual and transplanting it into the gut of a person with C. diff is by far and away the most effective and safest treatment available on the planet. So beyond that, now we have the technology then. We understand we can take fecal material from someone who's well, put it into somebody with C. diff, and lo and behold. But then over recent years, past 15 years, we've begun to understand that there are other diseases for which there are changes correlated in the gut bacteria. Might it be a reasonable thing to do to offer those people a fecal transplant, giving them healthy gut bacteria in hopes that it helps the underlying conditions? Well, it's been tried in a number of conditions like type 2 diabetes, inflammatory bowel disease, and most recently autism, and has proven significantly effective. The point is that people can get off on the wrong foot with respect to their gut bacteria for a number of reasons. They can be environmental, they can be genetic, they can be toxic. And then those gut bacteria don't pave the way for health. We can reestablish gut health by using good prebiotic fiber to nurture the gut bacteria, by using probiotics, and most recently, this most aggressive technology that you described called FMT, fecal microbial transplant, being investigated across a wide spectrum of diseases. I am not sure generally it's necessarily ready for prime time right now, The main issue, aside from the fact that there's the concern with reference to transmission of disease,
Yeah.
is in our current climate. But beyond that, we have to make sure primum non nocere, above all, do no harm, that we aren't hurting people. But I will say that the research, for example, looking at a recent study from the University of Arizona dealing with autism in children receiving FMT, was really very, very compelling. So I think we're going to see the technique refined moving forward, and I think you're going to see wider and wider application.
To be continued, for sure. I just wanted to, because, we talked about inflammation, and that could be like problems with, with our gut. And so there we go. That's the segue. Okay. So one last question from Allie. Says, any advice about frequent migraines for young women struggling with this since early childhood? 90% vegan, since about 1 year ago, no alcohol. Oh, you asked the question. I think you asked the question yesterday. Alcohol, no drugs. She said, thank you very much. What is your advice for frequent migraines? And 90% vegan. So I don't know what the 10% is, but 90% vegan.
Yeah. What is that 10%?
And we don't know what kind of vegan either. Is it whole food,
sure.
plant-based, or is
I
it
would say
French
that,
fries?
We have some wonderful medications that are available these days, but that wouldn't be, in general, what my practice is in dealing with people. I'm not being specific here. Is I like to look at the more lifestyle modification approaches first. But should we need a medication or something for pain, happy to do that. And I would say first, I would look at a couple of things. Number one, is the magnesium level in the red blood cell adequate? Not a blood test for magnesium in the serum, but have them take the blood and look at the magnesium level within the red blood cell. It's called a red blood cell magnesium level. Who knew? And some patients of ours simply decide to go ahead and start supplementing with magnesium. That's a nifty little trick. An herb called feverfew has a good pedigree in terms of—
What's it called? Fever what?
Justified. I like the use of high dosage DHA, which is omega-3, docosahexaenoic acid, for example, from fish oil, has some nice anti-inflammatory activity. We've seen headaches do very well on ketogenic diets, but certainly what we've actually published is the role of a strict gluten-free diet in terms of possibly being helpful. Now, I'm not saying that a person needs to have celiac disease to do well on a gluten-free diet. That's what Grain Brain was all about. You don't have to be diagnosed with celiac disease to have a nice response sometimes from a gluten-free diet. The next thing I would look at would be the quality and quantity of your sleep. And how do you know? Well, you can go to a sleep clinic and have a sleep study, or you can simply buy an Oura ring, O-U-R-A, which is what I wear, and it tells you not just how much sleep you've had, but what is the quality of your sleep? How much REM did you get? How much deep sleep? How long did it take you to fall asleep, etc.? Not sleeping well is a significant cause of migraines. And the last thing I would mention is to definitely immediately get a calendar. I think a paper calendar works better, and write down the days that you have your headache, and also keep track of your food. And you want to learn, if you can, two things. A, is there a food relationship? Like, could it be nightshade vegetables that you might have a problem with, which are things like tomatoes, eggplant, white pepper, white potatoes, or green pepper, or tobacco? And is there any relationship that you might see with respect to your menstrual periods in terms of the frequency of these headaches? Women often will note that there is a relationship with just prior to the onset of menstruation or somewhere in the cycle. And that allows the treating physician to gain a better understanding if he or she, the treating physician, is skilled in terms of natural hormone replacement. Generally, what we find is that tweaking with a little natural progesterone can be helpful there. And the other thing that can be helpful is the use of a diuretic or a water pill just prior to the onset of menstruation, a very low dosage through menstruation that can be helpful. If that's the choice of the doctor, then he or she needs to be careful with respect to checking magnesium and potassium, because those can go down when women are on a water pill. But by all means, simplest thing I would recommend, get a paper calendar and start charting these headaches and see if there's any relationship to a lifestyle issue.
Wonderful, wonderful. Dr. Perlmutter, we probably could stay here all day talking to you and just picking
Well,
your
I've
brain.
only got 2.5 more hours, so let's get started.
Well, I am just so grateful. We need to have you back more often now that that we've had you back. I would love to have you back as more often as you can. You've got so much information, lots of food for thought, and it's time. It's time for us to stop blaming everybody, take ownership of our lives, stop looking at the speck in somebody else and start looking at the plank in ours, and really truly dissect and look at our lives like a self-cleaning oven. What can I do? Because and that's why I love the I Am the Solution workshop, because it's about, the I am, of course, is the higher power, but the solution is within me. And so it's to be able to look at within ourselves, because we know the answer. We're just unwilling to open the envelope to confirm the answer. And so I'm hoping
with you.
Yeah, I'm hoping that all of you will decide to join us on February 5th, 6th, and 7th. It's a weekend workshop. And then, of course, we have the 12-week lessons from Exodus with Dr. Lorraine Day starting next Monday. So I hope that you guys can continue to, continue to work within yourself to not only take your brain back, but your life back, and and experience that joy again. So Dr. Perlmutter, thank you so much for everything that you do to bring this good news that if we caused it, we can uncause it. We can create something new and different. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. And I just very much enjoyed spending time with you and all of the viewers. So thanks again.
Yes, thank you. And so we're going to say goodbye to all of you on the Facebook and YouTube, and stay tuned because there's more tomorrow.